Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 24th, 2018 Common Council meeting. And the first order of business would be the roll call.
Hirsch.
Here.
Riley.
Here.
Boersma.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Reeves.
Here.
Majewski.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Wiesinger. Here. O'Connor.
Here.
Durancic.
Here.
Bartlett is absent and excused. There are 11 alders present.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Before we get started, I do have a couple of communications. Does anybody else have anything before I start? Okay. Pardon me? Okay. The first one is, and Holly can piggyback on this, we'd like to change the meeting date for the first meeting in August and move up the time and have a committee of the whole meeting at 6 o'clock on August 15th. And we want to discuss the compensation plan that some of our leadership team has been working on. So if you could put that on your schedule, that Tuesday night, Holly can explain to you, there's something else important going on that night.
Yes. There is an election on the 14th. In past years, we've rescheduled the council meeting to accommodate for that. I sent out a doodle poll. I don't know that everyone has responded to that. Please let me know if you can't make the meeting. I think right now we are at 8 council members that can attend the meeting, but there are some of you that haven't participated in the poll. So I want to make sure we have a quorum before we set that up and send the agenda out, because there will be some business that needs to get done that night.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any communications?
Holly, could you just repeat the dates? The times?
So it would be August 15th instead of the 14th, so that Wednesday. I know that there's a library board meeting that night at 6 or 6:30, but that's the only night that week that there's people are available.
6 o'clock is committee of the whole.
Right.
Yes.
And anybody else have a communication? Alderperson Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to announce that Stoughton High School is going to be putting on Grease on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay, thank you. And I have some recognitions I'd like to make tonight. Over the past several weeks, there's been quite a few incidents that have occurred in the Stoughton and surrounding areas. And I want to take a moment to recognize some people that were involved in that. John Halverson was involved in a couple incidents with kayakers on the 4th Street Dam and also on the Dunkirk Dam, and went out of his way in order to help in 2 very difficult situations. Kristen Ott had to perform the Heimlich maneuver at the senior center. So we're happy to report that everything turned out well there. Last week we had a power outage out on Van Buren. Stoughton Utilities worked through the rain for over 12 hours in order to restore power for over 700 residents in that area. And then of course we had a number of people that participated or covered Stoughton while we could help in Sun Prairie. And I'd just like to read off the names of the people that were involved. Hopefully I don't miss anybody. Hopefully I don't mispronounce anybody's names. I know that our inspector, Steve Kittleson, went and helped out on some inspections. We had a number of people from EMS that went over there 2 weeks ago and helped out. Scott Holm, Bill Brew, Ed Bailey, Elizabeth Griffin, Ann Johnson, William Burrington, Dave Erdman, Jim Baldoff, Fred Neppel, Wayne Backman, Sean Skirpin, all went over there. They weren't told to go by anybody in City Hall, they just went. Lieutenant Pat Carlin also went there, and then also several members of the fire department either went there or covered here. Chief Wagner, Mark Miller, Dick Kittleson, Rob Lamers, Mason Barber, Brian Almy, Eric Hoho, Scott Broughton, Trent Niels, Mike Lamberty, Scott Helm, Jason Whitley, Captain Mike Olson, Mike Carpenter, Don Dushak, Peter Gander, Donald Hanson, Mark Hale, Jerry King, Brad Rask, Josh Ripp, Matt Hamilton, Travis Miller, Nick Pogorski, Paul Updike, Shelley Johnson, Josh Stedman, Kent Brown, Matt Wegner, Andrew Ott, Brett Topp, Tracy Bauer, Justin Richter, Chad Cartwright, Andrew Boersma, John Erlidson all went over there. Sid Boersma also went over there and provided relief for Red Cross. I'd like to thank you. And then also there was a number of fundraisers in town at some of the local establishments. There was lemonade stands, and I received a nice thank you from the mayor of Sun Prairie. So thanks to all. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to the next item, which is presentations, and we have one presentation tonight, and that's from the Stoughton Landmarks Grant Program Update. And I believe that I saw Peggy in the crowd somewhere. Peggy Varigan is here tonight. We appreciate you being here. You can tell us what you're up to.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for letting me update you. Hi, my name is Peggy Varigan. I'm the chair of the Landmarks Commission, and I just wanted to give you a very quick update about the local landmark mini grant program that we have been given funding for. There's been some activity with the grant program, and so I wanted to let you know what was happening. So the Stoughton Landmarks Commission received funding for a mini grant program for facade repair and improvement, and these are matching grants. And our first grant cycle was in 2017. So in 2017, here's a sample of the projects that we were able to fund. We had a very small budget, which was fine, and we were just trying to help as many people as we could. So we tried to grant something to any project that met the requirements. So people were this is truly a mini grant program. People seemed pretty happy to get whatever help they could for making repairs to their local landmarks. So these are grants only available to owners of local landmarks in the city. In 2018, we were funded again. And so in the 2018 cycle, we were able to fund 3 more projects. Again, the same approach. Try to help as many people as we could. So again, this is, it was a pilot grant program in 2017 to offer these mini grants to owners of locally designated landmarks. And the program was continued for 2018. The program provides facade improvement and repair matching grants to help facilitate reinvestment in our community. The grants are for exterior repair projects, although interior projects may be considered if those projects involve structural issues or mechanical improvements. Building owners must apply to the Landmarks Commission for the matching grants with a thoroughly developed scope of work that complies with Stoughton's Historic Preservation Design Guidelines and meets the National Park Service's Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Landmarks Commission reaches out to all owners of local landmarks to let them know about the grant program and to encourage them to apply. Since many local landmarks are on Main Street, these grants facilitate reinvestment in downtown buildings, while grants to other local landmarks in our historic neighborhoods help maintain the character of those neighborhoods. These matching grants are an excellent way for the city to demonstrate its commitment to local reinvestment in our historic Main Street and our neighborhoods while supporting residents who own historic buildings in our community. So as more activity happens with these grants, I'll be back to update you. Thank you very much.
Where do the funds come from? Maybe it was in our packet, but I didn't see that.
The city gave us the grant as part of the
Okay,
budget, annual budget.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda would be our public comment period. And I have four people registered. The first one registered to speak is Lisa, if you want to come up. And we just ask that you state your name, your address for the record.
Sure.
And you have 3 minutes, but I might grant you an exception if you're really nice to me tonight. And then Holly will let you know how your time is running. So
Sure.
there's 3 of you, so you each get 3 minutes, but.
My name
Okay.
is Lisa Schimmelfenning. I live at 701 Highland in Stoughton, Wisconsin. I'm here in an official capacity tonight, however. We are here tonight to recognize Kristen Ott. Kristen, as the mayor already spoke to on July 11th, in the course of her responsibilities as a receptionist at the senior center, stepped in to help someone who had a complete airway obstruction, meaning the person could not breathe, was starting to turn blue. Kristen deployed the Heimlich and removed the airway obstruction prior to EMS arriving. I would say this qualifies as above and beyond anything in Kristen's job description. So, that being said, this is happening during public comment because I wanted to do it sooner rather than later from the event. So, certificate of recognition to Kristen Ott, the Stoughton EMS Department, acknowledges that on July 11th, 2018, during the course of her duties at the Senior Center, Kristen rendered outstanding life-saving measures to the victim of a complete airway obstruction. Kristen's rapid actions prevented a devastating tragedy and saved a life. Stoughton area EMS applauds Kristen's outstanding response when faced with this medical crisis. This was truly excellence in action. So Kristen, thank you for keeping a calm head and helping to save a life of one of the citizens of the city of Stoughton. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you. There you go. Make room on the wall. Look pretty. Bob wants a picture.
All right. There you go. Did you have to go back to work after that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, gosh, after saving a life.
Thank you all.
Some of you might not know, but I was an EMT with the city of Stoughton for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next registered, which is a tough act to follow, would be Roger Springman.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Roger Springman. I live at 812 Creedeman. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the RDA, as I am the RDA chair. What I'm going to do tonight is give the council and the community a sneak peek at what's coming in the RDA over the coming couple weeks and months, because I think it's important for us to kind of keep constant communication and keep that good collegial spirit of cooperation going together. So the first thing I want to do, though, is say on tonight's agenda, you have items 6 and 7, which involve our TID 5 and TID 8. And I want to say, I really hope you give your full-throated endorsement to those 2 resolutions. Gary Becker, along with the RDA and its members, has worked real hard to make sure that we position the RDA to achieve all the goals of the community, and getting that riverfront project area to the point where we could realign TID 5 to create TID 8 was a big part of that project, and I hope you give your full-throated endorsement to those resolutions later on this evening. Second, what I'd like to do is to kind of now look into the future a little bit and say we are now moving into the pre-development planning phase of our project, the riverfront project, and this work first requires assembling all the critical properties. The 2 properties I'm going to call to your attention now are the public garage site and also the powerhouse site. Those 2, the RDA has viewed as critical parcels. And if you recall the map that's in the community flyer, those parcels all show up as owned by not the RDA but the city. But it's also clear that the intent has always been to make sure those parcels are part of the entire riverfront project area. So we're going to be putting together a request to transfer those properties to the RDA in August at our next meeting, and then coming back to you with that formal request in August for you folks to act upon in the future. So I want to alert you to that so you can kind of be prepared for a future's activity related to the parcels. And the final thing I'll mention is this. The other thing that's critical is that the RDA take charge along with the city in creating a process by which we can bring developers to the city to meet the many visions that we all have for that project area. So we will be spending some time, we the RDA will be spending some time in the month of August to look at some potential process elements, and rather than to say, here's what they are, here's what we think ought to be done, we want the advice and consultation of the council. So sometime in either later August, early September, we'll be interacting with you folks on the topic of the process by which we'll be inviting developers to come to Stoughton to create that brand new and wonderful project we know we got to have, and we're just kind of at the edge of getting, but we got to do it together. And the RDA is strongly committed to doing this as a togetherness project for the city of Stoughton, and that's our commitment to the city and commitment to you at the council to make sure we all go down the same road together at the same time, side by side. So that's our update, and I'll be around later for questions, or if you have other questions, you of course are welcome to attend our next meeting on August 8th, and we'll be covering these topics and others at that time. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, I have Laura Davis and Rich Morris are sent an email, and they're opposed resolution 136, 2018. And then I have one other person registered to speak, and that would be Brian Burkett. Brian available? I don't see Brian here. So basically, we'll work on this one internally then. It looks like something we can do. It doesn't really require any council action. So then the next item on the agenda, does anybody else have anything for public comment? Go ahead.
I see this has been a night of acknowledgement for various people, and I went to a funeral today, and what was special about this is that the Stoughton Police Department were present to honor the gentleman's funeral, and the widow chief is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for public comment tonight? All right, that moves us on to the consent agenda. You're looking for a motion for the items in the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
There's a motion by Jensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Reeves. Anybody want anything removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Next item is old business, and that's resolution 136 of 2018, and that's being presented by Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am presenting resolution 136, 2018, lifting the council-imposed demolition moratorium for 305-315 East Main Street. And I would move that our moratorium on this demolition of the building be lifted. This is a building also known as the Kittleson Yellow Building on Main Street. And I introduced this motion during last council, and it was clear that it probably should have gone through as a resolution instead. So tonight I'm introducing it as a resolution.
I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
So there's a motion by Boersma and a second by Alderperson Durancic. Did you have more you wanted to add?
I did. I've been doing a summary of what's happened with this building, and I think because not everybody was on council who were involved in this whole thing from the start. I'm just going to summarize very briefly what happened in this whole process. On September 26, 2016, the zoning administrator contacted the owner of that building, Tim Homer, about complaints about the building's condition. You have been provided a summary, a timeline by, I think, the Kittlesons, but I'm leaving out some of this out, but all the salient information I'm providing tonight. On September 27th, the application was filed by Tim Homer to demolish the building. What happened was, the building was sold to Dennis and Amy Kittleson. They purchased the property with the intent to have the building in demolition. On December 15th, Dennis provided documentation that the asbestos had been abated from the building. There was a request went to Planning Commission for project review, and it was tabled on January 9, 2017. On January 24, 2017, Dennis Kittleson provided an application and a fee of $440 for the conditional use process of demolishing the building, essentially. On January 24th, 2017, there was a public hearing set by the Planning Commission. There was a March 14, 2000 City Council imposed moratorium on demolition. That was in my records, March 14, 2017. In March 2017, a public hearing was set on April 10th in a planning commission. On March 17th, Attorney Dregney, at the request of essentially the council, sent a letter to Kittleson outlining the requirement for building project review. On April 10th, 2017, a public hearing at the Planning Commission was held. On March 14th, 2017, the moratorium was imposed by council following concerns about two ordinances, chapters 38 and 78, that needed to be rewritten and adjusted to comply with each other, essentially, so as to not continue to be a conflict for our two corresponding ordinances. On August 4, 2017, a letter was sent to Mayor Donna Olson and to our council, where our city attorney Dregney said that the Kittleson application applied as opposed to Homer's original application for a change in the building, which would allow demolition. On September 7, 2017, Attorney Dregney sent a letter to Mayor Olson and our council. And in these two letters, and especially I think the first letter I'm citing, it said that the Kittlesons had provided a request that may not comply with the use of that potential property after the building would be demolished. And essentially it also said that no action could be taken on this building to demolish it while the moratorium was in effect. So going back, we've got an original application in September 27 by a previous owner to demolish the building, and this has been pending with the Kittlesons for not quite 2 years. There has been progress, as I understand, on trying to resolve the two ordinances, which would kind of clear up the matter, but they haven't been to date. I think it's imperative that the Kittlesons get a fair and reasonable settlement in the situation. They own the property. It's their property. They want to demolish it. They have an application in. They can't even review their application, as I understand it, until the moratorium is lifted, and that is the reason that I am at this point requesting that the moratorium be lifted. And now some of the dates, there are a couple of dates that in my research it looks like they may be a couple days off, but I think as far as I know, all these dates are pretty accurate.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Hirsch, and then Durancic.
Thank you, and thank you, Sid, for putting this all together. I have a question. And this may go to Attorney Matt Dragney, if we lift the moratorium and we're not finished with ordinance 78, how is that gonna proceed? Do they goes back to the old defunct one that's kind of convoluted and kind of
That's-
fights
yeah.
against each other? I mean, that's not really fair either. I mean, I guess we haven't gotten very far in a year and a half with resolving this. And, I mean, there's been a lot of work, but it's still been a year and a half. So if we lift the moratorium, then they have to go back to the old ordinance, which there's some conflict. How is that gonna help Planning Commission and Landmarks Commission resolve their application?
So the Chapter 38 has been revised. The council has approved changes to Chapter 38, and Chapter 38 was never really an issue with respect to this particular
No, I
property.
said 78.
Chapter 78, which is the zoning code, has not been changed. The issues of concern with respect to Chapter 78, there were a number of issues of concern, but they weren't really conflicts with Chapter 38. There were questions raised by the council about what Chapter 78 requires. So, for example, Chapter 78 contains what appear to be internally inconsistent provisions regarding what procedure applies to process an application for project review approval. So in one instance, it indicates that the procedure is the same as the procedure for approving a conditional use permit. And under a conditional use permit process, the Plan Commission makes a recommendation to the council, which makes a final decision. But Chapter 78 also contains language that indicates that the Plan Commission makes the final decision on a project review application. And I rendered an opinion a year plus ago indicating that, in my opinion, the proper interpretation of Chapter 78 is that the Plan Commission makes the final decision. That was my interpretation of the ordinance. There were people on the council who disagreed with me, who thought I was wrong. There might have been people who thought I was right, I don't know. But in any event, that ordinance is still the law. One of the other things we learned about that ordinance is that, as I understand it, the inclusion of demolition as something that would be subject to project review approval was not actually even intended by the person who drafted the ordinance, and it wasn't. This Chapter 78, as currently drafted, is not particularly well designed in terms of providing standards that are workable in terms of deciding whether to approve the application. But here's where we would be if the council lifts the moratorium. Where this last sat was that the application was pending before the Plan Commission. There was a conclusion reached by me as a result of responding to questions from the council and the Plan Commission that the application that was pending probably could not be approved because it proposed a use of the property that was not a permissible use under the zoning code. And so I indicated that the application would need to be amended to move forward, to be consistent with the ordinance. But it couldn't be amended because the moratorium was in place. So if the moratorium is lifted, that would give the applicant the opportunity to go back, modify the application so that it's consistent at least with the ordinance from a use standpoint. And the Plan Commission would then be faced with having to apply the standards that we do have in the ordinance, which are admittedly difficult, and make a decision about whether to approve the application or not. So that's where the applicant and the city would be if the moratorium is lifted.
How close are you to revising ordinance 78 to smooth out all the inconsistencies that you had identified?
So I wasn't at the last Plan Commission meeting. I think Planning Director Shield was there. It's my understanding that the Planning Department staff is making revisions to the ordinance in response to direction from the Planning Commission I'm assuming they're going to share that with me at some point and that it'll go back to the Planning Commission. Once the Planning Commission is satisfied with the document, with the ordinance, it would then need to schedule a public hearing at the Planning Commission. There would be a public hearing on that ordinance. After the public hearing, the Planning Commission could then make a recommendation to council, and it could come to council, and it could be finally voted on. It's every prediction I've made about how long this would take has been wrong, so I'm not going to make another one. But I mean, my sense is that, and if Rodney wants to add to this, he can. I think we're close, but we still have the Planning Commission still, and you have some people on the Planning Commission here, so they can share their perspective on how close they think they are. But there's still a little work to do.
So if we lift the moratorium, we're stuck with the old ordinance. And then the Kittlesons are stuck with revising their application to a use that the council didn't like, which would have been an empty lot. They couldn't have a private park. And so now we have a vacant lot scenario, which isn't what nobody has envisioned, including the Kittlesons.
But I did come to the conclusion during my analysis that a vacant lot is a legal, allowable use of the property.
It is allowable use,
Yep.
but it's also an eyesore for a major corner of our city. And what they are proposing was a beautiful green space. So with the current ordinance, according to your thing, that the zoning authority administrator could actually create a new category of a private park or something like that, or is that true? I'm trying to read your
No,
statement.
what's happening under Chapter 78, nothing is being done at this point that would allow for a privately owned parcel on Main Street that is being used for recreational purposes. We have two different kinds of parks in our zoning code, two zoning classifications: active recreational use and passive recreational use.
Right, but they're both on public land. But
On public land, it's not allowable.
Is there any authority from the zoning administrator that could create a different, I mean, we had talked about this a year ago.
Is your question, could a zoning administrator interpret the code to say that passive recreational use or active recreational use is an allowable use in that district?
On a private parcel? I mean, I'm trying to figure out so that we have, if it goes forward, the city isn't regretting that the demo has occurred and we have a vacant lot that can't be used to create this beautiful green space that they're actually trying to do.
Why can't we just put that into the ordinance if that's something that we want?
Put what into the ordinance?
That we would allow a passive use, which would allow for a nice green space.
So, first of all, I don't think anything about the current ordinance prohibits the use of creating a nice green space there. In fact, that's allowable.
But it's only on public.
No, you
According
can.
to what your letter was, you can have a passive green space on public property, but there is nothing that, according to on private.
No, the problem is not the green space. The issue with the application was not that it would be attractive looking. It was how it would be made available to the public for use as a park, privately owned land open to the public to use for park purposes. So the city could amend the zoning code to allow that, to change the use classifications to allow that as well. That's another option.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay,
yeah.
that's something that could come out of certainly that could be done if you decide that that's appropriate.
Okay. Good grief.
Did you have anything else, Alderperson Hirsch?
No, I was just trying to
Okay.
get Matt to.
So is
yeah.
that something that you want the Planning Commission to consider?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I believe Alderperson Jurancic was next.
Yeah, because I wanted to make the point that when we had our charrette over a year ago, that the entrance to the riverfront property, the major view shed would be through 4th Street. And we had a lot of discussion about improving the view down 4th Street. This, what the Kittlesons are proposing, is exactly what we want. That this would be on the corner of 4th Street and Main Street. This would be a very attractive green space, and that hopefully, and I have not talked to the RDA about this, but thinking about it, I would like to see us work with the Kittlesons and see if there's something we can do, say like with a piece of artwork or sculpture that could be in this space and then repeated further down 4th Street, which then brings you to the development. And that may happen once we start to brand the development. There may be something, and again, this is just an idea I'm throwing out. I think we need to think like this, that this is kind of a wonderful opportunity to work with some private citizens to help us bring, kind of the attention down to the riverfront and to start to improve 4th Street. So obviously, I very much support this, and I would really like to see, is there some suggestion from the attorney that we have to make some minor change to the zoning code to allow this to happen? So,
If the question is to allow the, so the Plan Commission would still, under the current zoning code, have to make a judgment about whether to approve demolition or not. Assuming the decision is made to allow demolition, it's permitted to have a vacant lot, it's permitted to have a beautiful vacant lot, to plant it with nice, beautiful things. If the decision, if there's a desire to now open that lot up for public use, for recreational purposes, that would require a change to the zoning code, which Plan Commission can certainly consider as part of the work they're doing now.
okay.
Okay, so before we continue, we have a lot on their agenda, and we really need to stay focused on the resolution, which is whether or not we should lift the moratorium. Really, that's the first step. Anything that happens after that has to go through a process. So I really want you to focus on the question at hand. So I have Alderperson Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to have the reason why we're here today in this whole situation is because we were supposed to work on the amendments, and I'm sorry that it's taken so long. But we still are not done with that process, and I think we should move forward on that process before we go ahead approving something. I am against the lifting of the moratorium. There's a number of reasons. When you have a vacant lot, it decreases the value whether it's a park or not. If we make it a public park that's different than a private, what's going to happen if somebody gets hurt on a private/public? Whose liability is it? That's something that we're not even looking at. We're not even there to even talk or think about that. So I really think we need to let the planning go forward and figure this out. Another thing that I'm really disheartened by is the look of the building. If I let my building go down like that because I wasn't getting my way, I would get in trouble. I don't think it's fair that the building has been able to deteriorate more and nothing's been done about it. This is our downtown, and have respect for Stoughton. And that's one of the main reasons why I'll be voting against this, because just because you're not getting your way doesn't mean you can let a building deteriorate more and look, horrible. I think that's very disrespectful to this body and what we're trying to do. Whatever your intentions are, great or not, we don't have it in the ordinance to be clear to even move forward in this process that we're talking about making a great park and making it beautiful. But, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed as being part of this city that we've allowed someone to mess with us like that.
Okay, thank you. I think I heard a question there as far as liability. Would we have the city have any liability if somebody were to get hurt on that property?
Liability is not an issue on this issue. There is no reason to be concerned about liability for this lot any more than there is for any other private property in the city of Stoughton. The city does not need to be concerned about its liability with respect to that property being made a vacant lot or being made a park or what have you. And the owner would have immunity from liability if the owner makes his land available for recreational uses at no cost. So liability is not the issue.
Okay, I have Alderperson Riley and then Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is probably for council. If the moratorium is lifted tonight, does that in any way preclude progress on the underlying ordinances that we are trying to formulate to work with this project? In other words, are we stuck in time now, the moratorium is lifted, and we must operate under the current ordinances going forward?
I would expect work to continue on the revisions to the ordinance until that process is completed. However, the current ordinance continues to apply. So if the moratorium is lifted, then the applicant would have the opportunity to say, okay, now I'm going to go back to the Plan Commission under the current ordinance. Or the applicant could say, I'll wait till the new ordinance is adopted and proceed under that ordinance. It would be kind of up to the applicant to decide what to do. But the city can keep working on the revisions to Chapter 78.
Okay, because it seems to me that it's important that what Denise is envisioning is something that's possible once the process commences and the moratorium is lifted, and I would think it's not right now. Would I be correct?
So, again, I think that as I recall, and it's been a little while since I read this in detail, as I recall, the issue with the application, there were kind of two issues. One was a legal issue involving the proposed use of the property, which we've talked a little bit about. The other issue was, as I recall, the Plan Commission did ask the applicant for a more detailed description of what the applicant was going to do in terms of how the lot was going to be landscaped after the building was demolished. And as I recall, I don't think that process of reaching some kind of resolution on how the lot was going to be landscaped was completed before the Plan Commission. I don't know if Rodney can help me remember that. I think you're right. So my guess is, so if the moratorium is lifted and the applicant wants to move forward, I think the applicant has to amend the application to address the use issue, which is a very easy thing to do, and has to, I think would probably be well advised to present a landscaping plan to the Plan Commission that is responsive to the feedback that was given a year ago during that process before the moratorium was actually adopted. Assuming those steps are taken, then the Plan Commission will have to decide at that point whether it believes it should approve the application.
Thank you.
Alderperson Jensen.
Yes, I'd like to ask the council to consider waiving the rules to allow Mr. Kittleson to address the council.
Are the rest of you okay with that?
Yes, aye. Second, all.
Okay, that's fine.
I just want to address your comment directly. That property was for sale for about 7 to 10 years prior to us buying it. No one was in it. No one was doing anything to it. I have about 100 pictures of it. When we bought it, it hasn't changed one bit. You're right. There is a lot of shamefulness going on. However, I don't know that it's necessarily what we're doing. Some of the antics that have gone on, some of the verbiage that's been used by council is really shameful. You're right. So I guess I take great offense to you saying directly to us.
I will say
that we
directly
are
to you.
getting what we want. That property was for sale. No one bought it.
It's getting worse.
Come on. Can you address the chair, please? Okay, let's not make this personal.
It is personal.
Well, I know it is,
It
but
is personal. It was
not
made
here,
personal.
It's not. not here it's not. We're here to conduct the business.
You're right.
I would ask everybody here to focus on the issue at hand.
All right, the building was in disarray when we bought it. It was for sale for 7 to 8 years prior to us buying it. We bought it with the intention that you all are fully aware of, so we're not holding out to get what we want. I mean, it was for sale, someone else should have bought it, and we've gone through this and through this and through this. And yeah, it's frustrating at best.
It's been frustrating for us as well.
Right. So,
Yeah, but you know, I'm going to address the same situation, and for the people that are just new to council, every time we've done something, we've come into a roadblock. We can't do that. I had to apply for a conditional use permit, $440. Not a big deal. Wrote the check out, did everything we had to do. Oh, I find out later we don't need to do it. Did the city give me back my $440? Haven't yet. And then the comment for Ms. Johnson, if you look at the building next door, which is 343 East Main Street, my Incourts building, I've got $14,000 in brickwork. I've got $17,000 in a new roof. I've got $4,000 in a fire escape. I bought the building on the corner with my wife with the intention of letting her do what she wants to beautify the city. I'm going to put my money where it needs to be. It needs to be in my business building, not in a piece that was destructed from the very beginning. I didn't do it to it. We're trying to save it by getting rid of it so it looks a lot better. But you guys just keep, it's no matter which direction we turn, we're always told you can't do that. And it's going to go to another meeting. And then, no, you know what, we had our comprehensive plan meeting. People on the council, you remember that, because I was sitting right over there. Oh, we can't talk about the Gittleson one because we have to get there because it wasn't worded correctly. The last council meeting that you had 2 weeks ago wasn't worded correctly. So it's constantly just that same thing over and over and over. You guys do something in your life for at least 18, 19 months and be told you can't do it. Every day you get up, you can't do it. Got to do something different, can't do it. 19 months is a long time.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Alderperson Wiesinger?
I've only been on council since April, but already I think we have precedent of when city ordinances are creating undue financial hardship on citizens, we take action to correct that. And we did that with the different levies that were happening when there was gutter and street repair work going on and people were getting astronomical bills because of it. And I think this is a similar situation where we have citizens in our community who are trying to do something for our community, and they're having undue financial burdens and because of ordinances that are conflicting and processes that we have in place. So I think we already have precedent for taking care of these issues, and we need to do that tonight as well. And I would also just say about like the vacant lot and being concerned about it looking like an eyesore or the shamefulness comment that I think because if you look at the fact that they wanted to do this and the civic spirit that they were doing it in originally and just the goodwill and also the long history of Stoughton pride that they have and the vast amount of volunteer hours in our community and what that particular family and these citizens in our community have done for our community over decades, I just would be shocked if it would end up in disrepair or an eyesore or anything like that. And I think we owe them that respect for the decades of pride that they've had in our community and what they've done for our community.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Hirsch?
I agree wholeheartedly with Alder Wiesinger. The reason why I said eyesore is because previous discussions, before you were on council, when it was found out that it couldn't be a private park, that it had to be a vacant lot, those concerns came up because they couldn't treat it as a private park. That's why I'm trying to like really push the planning commission to get a new category for them so that has kind of more strict criteria that it adheres to like a private park that has certain criteria so it would never become an eyesore, that doesn't, you know, because Dennis and might not have that property forever. They might sell it, and so we need to have some checks and balances that if it changes hands, that those criteria, those expectations are maintained through, you know, the decades and eons. And that's all that what I was trying to say, is to make sure that if we redesignate or rezone it as something else, that we make sure that it adheres to what the city needs it to adhere to, so it never goes to a vacant lot kind of scenario of tall grass and unkeptness. That's all I meant. Not that the Kittlesons would ever do that, but it's just to protect the city in future years.
Okay, I have Alderperson Johnson and then Jensen.
Is there a way that, for whatever reason we made him pay that $450, that he gets that money back if he didn't have to do that? That's something that, if we told him we had to do it and then he found out that he didn't have to do it, that's not right.
I don't know all the history of that. I don't know if
Okay.
that's something you can comment on tonight, Rodney, or if we need to look into that.
We'd prefer to look into it.
I think we should look into that, yeah, before we.
Okay. And we'll do that. Alderperson, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, Alderperson Jensen.
Yeah, as a member of the Planning Commission, I'm completely willing to work with the Kilsons on whatever we need to do to get this done for them. That said, I'm going to support this, and I would call the question.
That's a motion to call the question. So that motion needs a,
A
there's
second.
a second.
2/3 vote.
And it needs a 2/3 vote. So it's a motion by Jensen and a second by O'Connor to take, to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. So that takes us to the question. And so we're going to take a roll call on the resolution, and the resolution is to lift the moratorium on that building. And Holly will take the roll.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Riley,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Johnson,
No.
Reeves,
I abstain.
Mieski,
No.
Caravello,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Wiesinger,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Durancic,
Aye.
Bartlett. Oh, I'm sorry, Bartlett is not here. That motion carries on a vote of 8-2 and 1 abstaining.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next item is new business, and that's R137 of 2018, and that's coming from the RDA. Does anybody from the RDA, would they like to introduce that?
Denise can, that's fine.
Denise, would you like to? It's Resolution 137 for TID 8.
You want me to introduce that?
Sure, and then I imagine we'll have Gary come
The
up.
RDA met this month and recommends that council approve R137, 2018, designating proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for tax incremental district number 8, City of Stoughton of Wisconsin, and I so move.
I would second that.
All right.
And Gary Becker is here to answer any questions, but hopefully we've vetted this thoroughly over the last couple of months.
Does anybody have any questions or would like Gary Becker to speak to this topic? Otherwise, we can vote on it right away. Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. That takes us to R138 of 2018.
Again, the RDA met this month and recommends council approve R138 2018, amending the boundary and approving a 3-year life extension for tax incremental district number 5, City of Stoughton, Wisconsin, and I so move.
Second.
And again, Gary Becker is here to answer any questions. We've had public hearings. We haven't had any feedback negatively on any of this, so
Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. R-140 of 2018 comes from the Planning Commission, and I believe all the...
139?
Yep,
I'm sorry, 139 comes from the Planning Commission, and that is going to be Alderperson Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Planning Commission presents Resolution 139, 2018, approving the conditional use permit for Ron Grasso to allow more than one principal structure on a lot at 300 Business Park Circle, Stoughton, Wisconsin. I would so move.
Second.
This is I think there's, well, he's got it right up there. There's 4 duplexes on there right now. He's proposing the 5th duplex, which is there, and then 7, I guess those are
Storage?
Self-storage.
storage units, yeah. 7 storage units.
And stormwater.
Yep. And then the stormwater, right?
Planning Director Shield, do you have anything you want to add?
The applicant originally submitted this anticipating the additional buildings would be sited on this property, but the Planning Commission really wanted to see how it worked with the first 4 initial ones. It seems like it's working well. The plan does add this area to the rear of the facility. You'll recognize the rear 75 feet of this is a preservation area that was part of Lot 14 that the council imposed prior to the sale, and that area is still being preserved.
Okay, any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Now we'll go to Resolution 140 of 2018, and that's also from Planning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution R-140, 2018, approving an extraterritorial jurisdiction land division request by Shelby Hoops for property located at Skyline Drive, Town of Pleasant Springs, Dane County, Wisconsin, and I would so move.
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Any discussion on this one?
It's a simple jurisdiction, or extraterritorial jurisdiction approval that was done, 6-0 vote.
Okay, I have Alderperson Durancic and then Reeves.
Yeah, I'd like an answer. Why is it 3.1 acres?
Yeah, the applicant actually made a conversation or discussed this very topic. This is the least suitable area for farming of the entire site. The remaining parcel, this flag that comes back here, is actually all tillable land. The adjacent landowner still continues to own and farm this area. So for them to handle tillage, this is the most suitable method to do so, and this was the least desirable farmland, and therefore they're requesting this to be configured in this manner.
Okay, thank you.
Alderperson Reeves.
Just a question, did it have to be approved by Dane County, or maybe it already was and I just missed that in the packet? Or?
Yeah, Dane County and the town have to act on it as well.
And so have they done that, or does it come here first, or I'm just...
It's going through the process at the same time.
Okay.
They need to have their approval.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions about this one? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that passes. Thank you. Resolution 141 comes from Planning.
Thank you, Your
Person
Honor.
Jensen.
Resolution 141, 2018, approving an extraterritorial jurisdictional land division request by Tim Thorson, property located at 810 U.S. Highway 51, Town of Dunkirk, Dane County, Wisconsin, and I would so move.
I'll second.
A motion by Jensen, second by Caravello. Anything on that one, Greg?
Yeah, it's, again, it's the extraterritorial jurisdiction. Mr. Thorson, I believe, is here in the back, and he can answer questions if you need to. Pretty straightforward.
Planning Director Shield?
This was all one large parcel that contained their commercial operation as well as a homestead or a house. This splits off the residence from the commercial activity.
Any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. All right, we're moving right along. Resolution 142. This one's coming from Planning.
Oh, yes. Me again. Resolution 142, 2018, lifting council imposed a demolition moratorium for 193 West Main Street, and I would so move.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Jensen, a second by Caravello. Anything on this one, Greg?
Yep, this was to allow the owner, the new owner of this property, to demolish the back portion of this building, which is in rather rough shape. I was down there, took a look at it. And to, the proposal then was to add
an apartment and a garage.
apartments and a garage.
Yep.
Okay. Planning Director Shield and then Boersma.
I think it's noteworthy to indicate this is really just lifting the demolition moratorium to allow them to go through the process for consideration of the building as proposed, to remove this portion and to add the structure onto it. So tonight's action doesn't approve those improvements at this point. It's just to deal with the moratorium aspect of
Allows them
it.
to do that, right.
Okay. Alderperson Boersma.
And Alder Jensen, this is not in an overlay district.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Correct?
excuse me, yes, it is.
It is, okay.
Yes, it is, and it's also, it's subject to all of the
Okay.
rules and regulations.
Yeah, currently, the only moratorium is on the properties in the downtown overlay district and the blacksmith shop. All the other ones we lifted. I think you might have been out earning your doctorate when we voted on those
Okay.
items.
Thank you.
So, and this would still have to go back to planning for approval, is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, this would be subject to project review approval under the existing Chapter 78, the same process and the same procedure that applies to the earlier property we were discussing. And this would lift the moratorium with respect to the whole site, with respect to this site.
Alderperson Hirsch?
Now, this is a local landmark, so, right, so it has to, doesn't that also have to go through?
It's not a local
It's not a
landmark.
local landmark,
No.
it's a contributing building in the historic overlay
I didn't
district.
know, because the front of it looked like a landmark.
It is a beautiful building,
Right.
and I think that the intention is to keep it that way.
And it's just the back part that probably isn't, even if it was a local landmark, that.
Yeah, you can see the one area, kind of the lower roof area there on the left, it's kind of a dumpster area. And then I think the apartments would go up on that backside a little bit more. So he would still have a little bit of a newer facade under his current proposal, but like I mentioned, that would still have to go through and be approved by the Planning Commission. Any more questions on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed, okay. And that takes us to ordinance 21 of 2018, and this is a first reading, Greg.
Yep.
This one's coming from the Planning Commission as well, first reading.
Yes, it's ordinance 21, 2018, amending the zoning classification of certain lands located southeast of the intersection of North Page Street and County Highway B in the city of Stoughton from RH rural holding to SR4 single family residential to TR6 two family. And first reading, so it'll come back in 2 weeks or at the next meeting.
Okay, anything you want to add now, Planning Director Shield?
Yeah, subsequent to the public hearing and the action by the Planning Commission, the applicant has requested that this full lot, it's shown as a parcel here, but the full lot, lot 156, also be included in the amendment to TR6. So the area being proposed to be rezoned is essentially this large parcel and lot 152, 53, 54, 55, and 56 as requested following the Planning Commission action. So that'll be before you to consider at the next meeting.
All right, any questions for now? Otherwise, it'll be, oh, go ahead.
Well, just to be clear, the 52 through 55 are still single family, and it's only 156 that's changing to the TR?
No, 152 through 156 are all proposed to be changed to TR6, along with this larger parcel, lot 1.
So that one also will be subdivided into little parcels?
that may be. Nothing's been approved, but there has been some concepts for, that they've been floating to try to do that. That hasn't been acted on at this point.
Okay, if we have, Alderperson Dranczyk.
Well, we do have kind of a proposal in our packet, and I have to admit that, you know, the proposal only has one entrance and exit, and it has the one-way streets. It becomes an isolated neighborhood, essentially, because it's got Page to the west, B to the north, railroad tracks to the east, and then the path to the south. And I really think this is really poor public policy to try to endorse something like this. I mean, the original plat that was approved years ago had it as single family. And now you know, the proposal is to make it into this kind of isolated little neighborhood, which I have to admit I would not support.
Go ahead.
It's obvious I need to expand some more on the description. The ordinance as presented indicates there's conditions in which the group development would even be considered. So this rezoning to TR6 for the larger parcel that was on the top of the page does not endorse, does not grant any inherent approval for the concept that's in your packet. This indicates the need for them to go through a group development process and conditions in which they'd have to follow in order to proceed in that manner. So even if it does get zoned TR6, it doesn't unilaterally grant permission to lay it out as shown in there.
Sure. Alderperson, or President Majewski.
Director Shield, what does the comprehensive plan say for this area?
I think it's actually TR6, two-family residential.
And what you'll find is if you read the items in there, what we try to do, and Rodney and Matt worked really hard on this with Michael Stacy as well, is with the new conditional use permits, we tried to put some language in there that really gives the city the opportunity to do things on our terms and not have to rely on, you know, the new legislation that passed last year, which really limits our options. So that's what all these recitals, you know, that's why they're in there, is really to protect our interest on this. And I think you may see a lot more of this going forward up until the point we consider looking at some of our zoning ordinances. Alderperson Boersma?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. There was concern about this particular development and in terms of them kind of skirting an issue of planting trees in the park row. And I'm wondering if this changes that to require them to adhere to our policy.
I think in condition, the last bullet point on the bottom of the page addresses that very issue related to trees.
Okay, because it's been a problem in that area in the past, and because they had been granted permission and sort of was grandfathered in, that they didn't have the same requirements, but now that should take care of that.
The last bullet point speaks to that. If the group development or a group development concept evolves, this inherently requires the street, imposes that additional street tree requirement on that larger parcel.
Okay. And we can't do anything about the past, but we can do something going forward given this ordinance.
There's always an option that the city can proceed with tree installation in park rows at the city expense. There might even be special assessment options if you so desire to pursue that in a different manner.
Alderperson Hirsch.
Can you, because I know that this developer came to the Park and Recs, and we were concerned about there is no parkland designated in this.
Mic?
Huh?
She can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So I was, is it assumed that, I mean, that the bike path is the park, or you know.
I think these are all salient questions, but they're really related to a larger topic. The area where the bike trail or the path that you're speaking of is still remains to be Marie Drive right-of-way. And that has not been vacated and will continue to remain public right-of-way, and I'll show it on this graphic, until such time there's a potential change. Again, this is a conceptual plan, it's not endorsed. Future Marie Drive is shown on this concept. In one scenario that he shared with others, would suggest that this would be a trailhead, called a trailhead on this map, and be a green space. That may or may not evolve, but that's certainly not been fully approved as such at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I said. Anybody else? Otherwise, this will be back at the next meeting. All right, thank you very much. We're at resolution 143 of 2018, and this also comes from the Planning Commission. We were busy, weren't we?
Yeah, yep. I get the hat tonight. Resolution 143, 2018, a resolution by the City Council, City of Stoughton Common Council, regarding a certified survey map approval request for property located at the southeast corner of North Page Street and County Highway B. City of Stoughton and the Planning Commission approved 6-0, and I'd so move.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Alderperson Jensen.
I gotta refresh my memory on
Okay,
this.
Rodney will take it over then.
This is a fun one, actually, because it's a resolution that if you adopt it, it actually denies the CSM. Because the CSM doesn't meet some standards, and in addition, the applicant understands has requested it be removed from consideration. So we're essentially taking action to approve a resolution, but it denies the submittal or the approval of the CSM.
Can I just
Sure, Alderperson Riley.
Thank you. Mr. Shield, for the sake of clarification, is this the same Dane property we're just talking about, I assume? Right?
Absolutely, yep.
Very good. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Good catch.
Can't get anything past you, can we?
Hey, you know, I'm still awake.
All right. Alderperson
For you.
Hirsch.
I guess,
Give it
so
time,
if
Tim,
we
give it time.
approve this, we're actually denying what you're proposing.
You're denying that CSM that's on the screen right now.
Nobody wants it anymore.
So then why, or is there an ordinance to have?
The ordinance is related to the zoning that's applicable to the land underneath.
Okay.
So the applicant still wishes to pursue the zoning change,
Absolutely.
but
This plan
that
is-
can move forward consistent with denying approval or disapproving the CSM.
Correct.
So, if
We
we
were
vote.
just as confused at planning, so don't feel bad
Okay,
about it.
so
This
if
one
we
is the
vote
wild
yes, we deny it.
Yep,
That's correct.
Okay.
that's the recommendation,
As well as the applicant's wishes.
yes. No, we had to change our heart.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on this one? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. All right, now we're getting to some fun stuff. R 144, 2018 is coming from the Park and Recreation Committee, and that would be Alderperson Hirsch.
Is it really Park and Recs or Public Works?
Well, it's both, actually. Who wants to do
Matt's
it?
not here, so do it.
There's nobody here from Public Works.
Okay.
I'm here from Public Works.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're not the
Nobody's
chair.
here from Public
But
Works.
I
Oh, with the
relinquish
chair.
my thoughts and desires to Alder Hirsch.
Sorry.
I'd like to put forth 14R 144 2018, the turf management policy 2018, to put forward to approval.
What are the
And I so moved.
I will second it, though.
Thank you. Sorry about that. But she is the chairperson. She outranks you, so that's just how we roll. Anything else on this? Otherwise, I see Director Abears here. He can run us through it, whatever you guys want to do.
I guess
ahead.
I have, going back through it, Brett, and you can come up I have a couple of changes because we went through this joint meeting quite fast, and I know you were writing furiously, but there were some things that were not changed that we had, I think, discussed.
Sure.
Or maybe I discussed in my head but never really vocalized it. I have no idea because I've read this so many times. A couple of amendments I would like to make for this is one under the definition to actually give credit to the National IPM Roadmap of 2013, which is a kind of collective federal organization that actually came up with the definition for integrated pest management.
So is that the IPM, the first one there?
Yep, so it'd be called, in parentheses, at the end would be the National IPM Roadmap 2013. And then under definitions, the weeds and pesticides need to be brought down. That just needs to be
Space bar or whatever.
space bar.
In my copy it is, so it,
No, not the one that I just like printed off from our packet
it'll be
today.
a clean copy too that I'll submit to.
Then under category C, I think we had talked about it, that where you say that alternative methods for treatment other than use of pesticides would be given preference for this category. That's actually for all categories. And then, I mean, that's just what IPM is you look at all, all the other things, and if you still have weed pressure after you've done the overseeding and the fertilizer and all that, then you use the pesticide. So I would just remove that from category C and put it as one of your practices under number 3 under practices and procedures in 5. Just say that alternative methods would be for treatment instead of just saying that it's only going to happen in C.
Okay.
And I would say in lieu of or in conjunction with herbicide treatment in there. So you have would be used in lieu of or in conjunction with herbicide treatment. So all
Good, all
these
right.
things are going to be happening. So
Okay.
Okay.
and then there is, we did discuss this, that under notification, we talked about that your staff would work with the Park and Recs director to identify the pesticide schedule with least interference with user groups, but with the pesticide applicator being taken precedence over the user group schedule. Remember we talked about where we really want it for future, because we know you and Pat and Dan are doing a really great job. But again, we don't know in 10, 20 years if the same people are going to be here. We just want to make sure that you guys are coordinating still, and we did talk about it at that.
I believe it's in here somewhere. I put it from me, but as far as how we communicate with Park and Rec and how we go about
Yeah, I didn't see
schedules.
that unless this copy is not the right copy that you wanted.
It is. Well, I'll double check and make sure we have language in there that speaks to the communication between the Public Works and the Rec Department.
And then under D of that same section, it should be shall possess, not poses. So maybe it's just a little typo. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, so that was a motion to amend to
Right.
include all the changes.
And then I
You seconded the motion to amend. Okay, is there any discussion on any of that, or is everybody okay with this? Go ahead,
I
Sid.
do have one item, and that is, and I raised it at the meeting, which was Public Works and Rec, Parks and Rec, and that is that if people in the community would want to volunteer to do like manual removal of weeds or whatever, that it was clear that they can do that, and I would have preferred to have it somehow written in, but I think it's acceptable the way it is. But again, I think if people really like groups like Natural Stoughton or Sustainable Stoughton or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever want to help with improving the green spaces, that they could offer to do that as groups to help the Public Works and Rec Department.
Okay, go ahead, Brett.
Alder Boersma, we already do that currently. We definitely work with a lot of different groups in the community to weed like our beds and do different things like.
We just had a conference call today, as a matter of fact.
So we already performed those types of things with different groups, and we look forward to doing it even more.
Okay, Alderperson Reeves?
And mine are just a couple of typos too, which may have been changed on yours, but on 5E, there is no E listed, so I'm not sure if something was missing or so, or maybe just we don't need the F. And then on 6B, there's not a B.
Yeah, and the formatting will all come when I give the clean copy to Holly.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody's okay with the changes that Alderperson Hirsch went through though, right? Okay, so let's vote on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, so that takes us back to the original motion as amended. Any questions, comments on that? I know it was a lot of work, and this thing has been kind of evolving over the years, and I think we have a pretty solid policy, and thanks for everyone for getting together for that joint meeting to get through this. And I know the school district kind of shares our vision and our values on this. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with this whole thing is integrated pest management. And so it's IPM. So it's using all the different tools at our disposal to manage our turf, and not just using pesticides to treat our green spaces. So our ultimate goal was to reduce or eliminate the use of pesticides in the community through IPM. And we do work with the school district, Calvin Merritt. We've had multiple meetings with them, and I feel like we have a plan that's very similar to theirs. And so from a community-wide standpoint, I think we're all on the same track.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, that one carries. That takes us to item R145 of 2018. This one's coming from Public Works. Alderperson Boersma wants to do this one.
Okay, and I'm going to present this resolution, but also the questionability of whether I'm on that Public Works Committee, nonetheless becoming the vice chair. Because I'm a fairly good egg who values especially forgiveness to the mayor, I will present this resolution. I present Resolution 145, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement with Norcon Corporation to perform bridge rehabilitation work for 4 bridges within the city of Stoughton. Public Works Committee approved 4-0 on July 17th meeting. These bridges, and Rodney can address that too, but are on Fortin Street, Main Street, and there are 2 on 4th Street that need improvement and need some work, and Public Works wants that to go forward.
I'll second that.
I move to approve.
Yep, there's a motion and a second by Jurancic. And then, did you have anything you wanted to add, either one of you?
I can speak to a little bit.
Okay.
The DOT does every 2 years, they do an inspection on all of our bridges, and they give us essentially a list of things that they recommend for us to improve. So based on those recommendations, we went out for bid, and this is what you have before you.
Okay, any questions on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And just to show my gratification, I'll let Alderperson Boersma do R146.
I'm not on the cemetery board.
Matt's not here either,
Okay.
so Public Works is the closest thing.
I present.
You're the chair?
I present Resolution 146, 2018, accepting the cemetery and cemetery board rules draft changes as reviewed and approved by the cemetery board. Cemetery board approved this on a 5-0 vote on June 18, 2018, and I so move.
Second.
All right, and a motion and a second by Jurancic, and since you're the chair, we'll let you speak to it.
I am the chair of the cemetery board.
But you can't make a motion,
Yeah,
so.
that's right. So essentially what this does is it cleans up our current rules, and it separates out the responsibilities of the cemetery board from those rules. The last page in your packet has the cemetery board, essentially their bylaws. And so it really is a more clean copy, I think, for our users to understand and to have with them, if they wish. So there's really no major changes except for We do feel like we should allow dogs into the cemetery, just like our other parks, as long as they're on a leash and they do clean up the refuse, after they do their business. Dogs or cats or other pets are a big part of a lot of people's families. We feel like they should have the opportunity to bring them to the gravesite.
Okay, Alderperson Hirsch?
I just have like a curiosity question. When I was reading, I was really curious when you said that the cremins could be placed in the grave, but it had to be in a non-biodegradable container. Why is that? And do you check to make sure that there isn't like these containers and caskets are not going to be leaching into our soil and groundwater and stuff like
So
that?
the cremains do need to be contained so that they do not leach into the ground.
Yeah, but I'm more concerned about the container leaching as opposed to
You're talking about like plastic type containers and things like
Okay.
that. I can't speak to that specifically because I don't inspect the actual vessel. But we do have our person that does dig the graves and place the cremains in to make sure that they're not a biodegradable vessel. So as far as plastics and different types of containers, that's something we really haven't broached, to be quite honest.
It'd just be interesting. You want just do a soil toxicity study around cemeteries.
We can certainly look into that and bring it up at the next cemetery board meeting.
Okay.
All right, Alderperson O'Connor.
For Alder Hirsch, do you know something about that? I think it's kind of interesting. what
Well,
you're
I'm
talking
just
about.
thinking if there's a lot of metals and caskets, and I'm
Well, I understand
curious
the
of why the
container, I mean,
cremins are not, because the cremins are basically organic material. Why you would not want them to decompose and you create them for? To me, it's counterintuitive.
Well, there seems to be like a growing popularity in like burying people. And,
Yeah,
like,
the green burials. Yeah.
yeah.
I can certainly look into that, and there's always room for changing to get better with our policies or our rules. A lot of these do come from state statutes, so I'll look into that and make sure that we're following all the rules.
I was just, it's the curiosity.
I think it's a great question.
The embalming causes more trouble than the body decaying.
Right, so if it's an actual burial, they're in a casket plus a vault. So
God, the discussions we get in.
we can talk more about
I'm a
cemeteries. if you'd
biologist,
like.
I'm sorry, that's just the way my brain thinks.
I'm
well,
just
pet
saying.
cemeteries.
That's probably the next thing.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Resolution 147 of 2018, comes from Public Works.
I remain on the Public Works Committee at this juncture, and so I move Resolution 147, 2018, approving the release and reestablishment of stormwater management easements for lots 134 through 137 in the Nordic Ridge Plat, City of Stoughton, Dane County, Wisconsin. Public Works met on this and approved it 4-0 on July 17, 2018, and I so move.
Second.
All right, there's a motion by Boersma, a second by O'Connor. Alderperson Boersma.
Okay, this is required because the stormwater area changed. It requires a reestablishment and of the stormwater system or place, and I turn to Rodney for clarification.
Sure. This map actually shows the depiction of the platted stormwater management easement on lot 134. The stormwater management easement area actually is enlarged as part of the design that took place after platting. So this is the area that would be vacated. It's a dedicated stormwater easement area, and a subsequent page actually shows the configuration of that stormwater management area. So that stormwater management area in that particular lot changed considerably to accommodate the design on that site. So that's really the crux of the request, to remove them on the 3 lots that are identified and reestablish them as the new configuration warrants.
Any questions or comments? Alderperson Wiesinger?
A couple months ago, there was things happening in this area, and some of the farmers around there like brought up stormwater management issues. Does this affect that at all?
This really just identifies the area where the stormwater management activities occur. Those stormwater management plans and improvements were designed consistent with city and county standards, and they're contained in the areas that are identified here. There still may be some disputes about whether they're fulfilling the required infrastructure design, but those things would be irrespective of these easements.
Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. We're on item 18, which is discussion and possible action regarding advisory referendum TIF funding for Kettle Park West Phase 2. And I think this was requested to be put on the agenda by Alderperson Johnson. Did you have an intro, or do you want to just get right into it, or what would you guys like to do?
Well, I would like to tell you what to do, but I don't,
Take a number.
Okay, I just would like the city council, getting really burnt out, to actually listen to the constituents that we are supposed to be representing. The last time we did a referendum, we didn't. So I wanted to give them a second opportunity, that if they actually go to the polls and vote, that we actually do what they want, and just to kind of see what the city wants, because we do these shots and ask them how they want the growth to be, and then we don't listen. So I just thought I'd put an agenda on, but it's
Okay. All right. So before we get into it, I know the clerk has some information that she'd like to share with us, and then after that, we'll open it up. And I know Mr. Riley has his hand up, so.
So state statutes require us to provide notice to the county of any referendum 70 days before the election. If this were to be something that you'd want to put on the November election, or the November ballot, the deadline would be August 28th. So we would have to take this up probably at our next meeting, and I know sooner is better than later, because they do start the ballot coding process and printing process as soon as they can. I think we get our ballots sometime in September, so it's really going to be pushing it close. I was also asked to get some cost analysis information together. It's hard to know exactly how much it would cost the city to do this, but the Dane County Clerk's Office said that based on what we did in April, the cost would be similar. Right now, we are not paying anything for ballot coding or printing of the ballots for November, because we have no local contests on the ballot. If we were to put this question on, the city would incur around $2,300 in coding and actual ballot costs. There would be an additional probably at least $250 for publishing notices. We would have to publish at least, I think it's the fourth Monday preceding the election in the paper, notice of the referendum questions. As soon as we put something local on the ballot, then we also have to publish the physical the ballot in the paper as well, which adds more cost to that as well. So my estimate would total be around $2,550. This is not budgeted for in the elections budget this year. And to date, in the fund, not including what we would pay our poll workers, we have enough to get us by through them. We have about $10,000 left to pay our poll workers, but in the general operating elections budget, we have $926.87 to get us through 2 more elections. That would involve any costs from the county, any fees that we pay to our facilities for having our election there, any supplies that we would need, and costs to feed our election workers. So.
All right, thank you. And then Alderperson Riley had his hand up earlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, would your thought be that this is with regard solely to whether or not we should be providing funding, Or is your question whether or not this Phase 2 should take place? I'm sorry, Alderperson Johnson, I'm asking you that. What's the nature, what's the scope of this referendum that you're proposing?
I'm not worried about the funding. I brought it up because I think if the constituents are asked again about this development, they should have their opinion and be able to vote it.
Okay, so it would be a broader scope, then. The question would be with regard to whether or not this residential development should even be considered, correct? Phase 2 should be considered at all?
No.
Oh,
With TIF dollars.
Well, that's what I asked the first time.
Yeah.
So, is the question whether or not we should be funding it at all, or whether it should take place at all? That's what I'm trying to get clear.
TIF dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alderperson Hirsch and then Durancic.
And the line, I guess, also, Alder Johnson, I was trying to figure out what your actual referendum question would be, because we don't have a TIF estimate from KPW at this point for Phase 2 yet that I am aware of.
We don't really
And so
have an
if we
updated
have
TIF
until
request.
August 20, not even, till next meeting, I guess it'd be the wording, would you say that the city would not, you would have a multiple choice, provide 0 TIF funding, up to $3 million TIF funding, or up to X million dollar funding? Or, I'm trying to figure out what information we'd actually glean from this referendum and how it would actually be worded.
I was just, when I was asking Holly, I just wanted to know the deadline and everything like that. If it can be a multiple choice, that would be great. And I don't have the exact deadline, the exact wording, because I just was really asking the deadline of things at first.
You can only ask yes or no questions on referendum election ballots.
And I also was just putting it out to the council to see how they felt about the situation of putting it on a referendum like it was the last time.
But you could word it saying, would you be, you could ask like 3 questions. It'd be a different way of doing the multiple choice of, no TIF money, yes or no, up to $1 million TIF money, yes or no, up to $5 million, yes. You can still do it that way.
I think that would be allowable.
Okay.
Alderperson O'Connor?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that, do you want Alder Denise?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Okay, I was just thinking that, if we're talking such limited amount of money, I don't see where we need a referendum for that. But I think there's also such a limited support, if any, on the council for a TIF out in there that it would be needless. I think it'd be a waste of time, money, and effort.
Alderperson Durancic.
Yeah, I asked Holly to send you the original April 2015 referendum questions. And it seems to me that we got, quite a bit of good information from those questions. And so I personally don't feel like I need to ask another question of the community about how they feel about using TIF funding for Kettle Park West, because I think it was pretty clear that people were not supportive of it. On the flip side, though, TIF funding can also be used outside of the district, half mile outside the district, to make improvements as a result of what has as a result of the development. And again, I think that we are elected to make these decisions, and I don't really feel that I would get a lot more good information from the public, to put a referendum, on the ballot. And if it's going to cost us, more money, basically we're going to have to do a lot of education around the issue, because there's a lot of things that can surface. So I really wouldn't support having another referendum question.
Okay. Just for my 2 cents worth, one of the things that I'm going to be bringing to the CACP next month is to do a community-wide survey, which I talked about in the spring. And we could certainly include these types of questions on the survey if we want, because it'll be more of an all-encompassing type of survey, and we can analyze it by demographics or whatever we'd like to do. So we could certainly include this as part of that, and obviously there'll be a cost associated with that survey, but that would be something that I would propose in the budget. So it would be paid for, where if we just, did a referendum now, we really don't have money allocated to do that. So I did have a conversation with Forward Development Group today. They're continuing to work on the plan that they propose. I think that overall, they heard some good, bad, and indifferent about what was proposed. I think they heard some positive comments about the layout and the types of housing opportunities that might be there. But they also heard loud and clear that people are concerned about using TIF out there. So I think they'll continue to work on that. And at this point, even if we had a referendum, I'm not really sure what the magic number would be. So, that's just kind of my 2 cents worth. I don't know if anybody else has. Alderperson Johnson and then Boersma.
The reason why I became on council was because of KPW. It really sticks hard with me, and very disappointed in how the city has represented the constituents, and I just don't want it to happen again. So we had a referendum. The people told us what they wanted, and I understand that you guys agree now, but I don't know how you guys are going to do it in the future, because I believe in the constituents is what we should watch for, and I'm so disheartened when people don't vote for what their constituents wanted. Okay. So that's why I'm on the council, and at times it looks like it's worth nothing for how people vote. So.
Alderperson Boersma?
Yeah, I think Alder Riley's question of the council person is really legitimate, because I could see constituents voting for phase 2 because they think it's good for expansion, and then not voting for TIF. And if phase 2 is impossible without some kind of TIF dollars, then it's like, what do you do then? Because I think that it was pretty clear the last time Forward came in that they thought, at least that's my sense, was that they're going to want to have some TIF dollars. So you might have a question like, yes, I think we should expand the city because we need new houses and we need people moving in and we need kids and we need single families and all that. And then if it comes to a point where, yes, we really, really want that, which I think a lot of constituents do want, and then say, but the only way that we can do it is with TIF dollars, and it's a but for, then we're caught in a horns of a dilemma. I could see, as I sit here, a reasonable amount of TIF dollars being used on a project like this, if it would allow the project to go forward. And I would be reluctant to vote about no TIF dollars if it prevents a legitimate project from going forward. I think we need development in our community, especially with single family. And if it's that but-for thing and we can't do it without it, then why have a referendum? It just puts people in a bad way. If you say, do you want it? Yes, we want it, but then do you want to use TIF dollars? No, I don't want to use TIF dollars. So then the question is answered, which is, can't do it without TIF dollars, so you let's not do it. It just seems like presents a really terrible problem for us. And a referendum, what good is going to be a referendum if we get those kind of answers to those kind of questions? The project can go forward without some tip dollars. That's my thought.
Thanks. You only get 3 strikes at it, so this is it. Make it good, but nice.
We asked the people before. They said no, no. So why aren't we listening to the people? They said no.
Alderperson Jensen.
I hesitate to say anything, but the question, on 2015, there were 3 questions in there. The one that is pertaining to what we're talking about now would be question 1, which was the question that asked if we approved the 5.1 million in TIF funding. That question was defeated 1,682 to 1,128. That's 2,810 votes. That's hardly our constituents. Our constituents are 12,611 people.
A lot of them can't vote yet.
They don't vote, we're still our constituents. If they don't vote, they don't tell us,
But
we
they're
don't know.
underage.
I'm sorry, what, somebody? They don't tell us so we don't know. So we have to make a decision. That's my point, is we have to make the decision no matter what. If, obviously this is telling us something, but you're looking at, what, 13.3% of the population said they didn't want it. We don't know what the rest of them wanted. So that's what our job is to make that decision. We are to take the best information that we have in front of us. And like Sid's pointing out, we have these 2 questions. Do you want it with TIF? No. Do you want it? Yes. What do? We have to make a decision. We need the housing. We need the income from the revenue from the housing. We need the families coming in. We need the kids in the school. I can understand Tass's request for this. I mean, I really do, but I just don't put a lot of faith in them because they're not telling us the whole story.
Okay, Alderperson Wiesinger.
I think we need to proceed with a little bit of caution using the 2015 referendum results as being the current, or what would maybe happen in a new referendum, just because when this happened, I think a lot of people did associate the TIF funding directly with Walmart, and this is a different question. So this is about single-family residents in residential development, and so I think that skews the results a little bit enough that it makes it a little bit more relevant to reference this particular referendum.
Okay, thank you. I have President Majewski would like to speak.
I think first thing you need to do, everybody here needs to do, is look at people all around you. We have a vastly different council sitting here than the one that was here in 2015, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because they had voted for KPW for the most part. Almost all of those people are gone. That should tell you something. That's one thing. The second is, if Forward Development comes in with a request for funding using TIF dollars, it's a slippery slope and it's a bad precedent. Legally, they have the right to do that right now because there's supposedly a component that is attached to the previous phase 1 that allows it to ask for TIF dollars, even though this is almost a 100% residential proposal. You can't ask for if it's 100% residential in most cases, you cannot go for TIF dollars. It's in the state statute, I believe. So the real question here is, if if that request comes in, does this council even allow that question to come forward? Because of the fact that, yeah, it may be legal on a really backside of a law that was never intended to be that way. And do we throw that precedent out there and have other companies try doing the same thing in the future? So that's the real question here. It has nothing to do with if it's a Walmart or if it is helping a certain developer. It's how do we use our TIF funding wisely? And where I'm viewing this right now, it's not a good use.
Alderperson O'Connor?
Well, if we're going to do something like that, I think we have to have some kind of a policy because, we're going to look at one TIF request tonight, and we're going to look at another one on the Riverfront project. So if we want input onto those, I think that should be part of a policy on TIFs. I wouldn't recommend it, and I wouldn't support it, but I think we want to do something like that, we should do it.
Alderperson Boersma?
Okay, I think the issue is, and I'm going to raise this just because we just had our first meeting last night of the coordinated effort between the school district and the city council. And it's real clear that everybody kind of sitting around that table are very, very concerned about declining enrollment. We need more kids in our schools. We need, it'd be nice to have families to move in, So I could think the question for me, and I may be just one of, I don't know how many people would vote for some TIF. I think the issue is really no TIF, reasonable TIF, or exorbitant TIF. I don't want exorbitant TIF, and I don't want no TIF. I would vote for some reasonable amount of TIF dollars if it's going to mean that our city's going to improve. And if it's absolutely that we're not going to improve that district with what we, at least some of us had intended, that we are, then we are stymied in the same position that we have been, which is essentially no growth. We could grow on the east side, for instance. I mean, we could use some TIF dollars to have a development in another place besides Kettle Park West, and I'm wondering if people in that situation would support it. I think more people probably would support TIF dollars used on the east side of Stoughton than on the west side. But we've got a developer now having looked at what we had said earlier, which was, we're not going to have TIF, and they came back with at least somewhat more a reasonable proposal for TIF dollars. So I'm on the side of growth, and I'm on the side of trying to get a reasonable accommodation for a developer that could improve our community.
Alderperson Hirsch?
Since we're supposed to actually be discussing of whether or not we are going to go forward with a referendum in the number 6, I guess I want to call it to question.
Well, there's really no question to call, is there?
Well, it says for possible action.
Make a motion.
Nobody made a motion, so, I mean, we could certainly, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so the agenda is consideration and possible action directing staff to prepare a resolution to conduct advisory referendum, including providing direction to staff regarding the specific language. So I think the question is if someone wants to make a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution and to include in the motion the language they'd like to see on the question. That's what the agenda item contemplates, or questions, could be multiple questions.
And I'm not hearing a desire to do that if somebody wants to.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Do I have to do the wording tonight?
You don't have to, but if you don't do it tonight, we'd come back with a resolution with a blank in it, as far as what the question is.
Can I ask a quick question with respect to where we are right now?
Ask the person
I
next to you.
apologize. Can I ask a
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
If we were to take that measure, that is simply developing a question as opposed to approving the referendum, correct? In other words, we're not then committed to doing the referendum, are we?
No, the way the agenda is structured, the intent is to give the council the opportunity to direct us as staff to prepare a resolution to bring back to you at your next meeting that you can then vote on, but the agenda suggests that there's an opportunity to provide direction on what the question should be. So that can be included in the draft resolution that you would then consider at your next meeting.
So go ahead, Alderperson Johnson, then.
I don't know if it's even pays, because I don't think I have the support, so it's,
Okay.
withdraw the motion.
Okay. Did you have something, Alderperson Johnson?
Well, I know, I was just going to ask a question, that if we would say yes to a referendum, then we would have to have a discussion about giving direction on language.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think we all know a little bit more about referendums than we did when we came here tonight. And
Yeah, we don't listen to them.
I think we knew that.
No, we didn't.
So, I haven't heard no further conversation. Do we want to move on to the next item? It appears that we do. So item number 19, does somebody want to read the motion to, looks like we want to go into executive session.
Do you want to go into closed session right away, or do you just want to read?
What do you think, Matt? Is that how you have it written?
So I'll tell you what the intent is, then you can decide whether you want to do part of it in open, part of it in closed, or all of it in closed. We're going to be discussing how the city might choose to respond to a request for TIF funding from STI Inc., otherwise known as Stoughton Trailers. There will be a presentation by Mr. Becker that will begin we'll begin the process with a presentation by Mr. Becker. That presentation will, of course, have some relevance to your decision-making process as it relates to how you might respond to this proposal. It is something you can do in closed session if you choose to, because it's directly related to developing the city's negotiating position with respect to potentially providing TIF funding to STI Inc.
Would you recommend that we go into closed session for this?
Let me ask, Gary, what's your feeling about the presentation itself?
I don't think there's anything that would be considered confidential in here.
That?
It's public knowledge that the action is under consideration.
Yeah. And so if you're comfortable with your presentation and open, fine. And then, but when it comes to the discussion of what proposal, how to respond to their request, I think that should be in closed session.
Maybe it should be in closed session. There is one piece of information in there
That shows some negotiation stuff,
Okay.
comparing it to another community.
But you know better than I do, Gary, about your presentation, so.
Yeah, I think it's probably better to do it in closed session.
Okay. That's your recommendation from staff.
Okay, then I would move that we go into closed session as per Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parens 1, parens E, to consider the city's bargaining position in connection with the possible negotiation of a TIF grant agreement, and I so move.
Second.
Second by Riley. Any discussion on that? We need a roll call.
Do we have like a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, we'll take a recess after the roll call. That's a good idea.
Riley,
Yes.
Boersma,
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were taking a recess. How silly. Yeah, aye.
that was your vote.
We're going to vote first and then a recess.
I'm back, aye.
Majewski,
Aye.
Caravello,
Aye.
Jensen, Wiesinger, O'Connor,
He's at the bathroom.
Hirsch,
Aye. How about me?
and Duransic.
Aye.
Okay, we'll take 5 then, and then we'll start up in closed session.
Just had it
Sorry about the obstacles.
That's a problem. We only have one issue. You know, because the thing is, and I tried to talk to her.